Hello, winners, and welcome once again to the Wrong Button podcast, where we talk all things nerd, most things video games, and today we're talking everything Star Wars with Tyler.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, really? You say hello there when you greet me. You don't say hello there here.
Well, I thought you were supposed to wait until the end. That's what Kenobi did, right?
That is, and we'll get into that one because oh god, that's so good. This is for everyone now, so that way if you're like, hey, I haven't seen it or I want to tune out, this is going to be the spoiler cast for Kenobi. Everything will have aired for over a week now, but we are going to talk the entire show, spoilers. I want to try to keep it a little bit organized here, so I figured we'd do overall. Um, overall, like, how did you feel about it? Uh, then I would say we'll go into characters and then start going into specific pop plot points.
All right, sounds beautiful. Let's
So,
uh let's kick it off.
overall, what'd you think?
Overall, I loved the series. As somebody who grew up with the prequel era,
Mm-hmm.
like most of us Star Wars fans out there, I was just in awe that we got to see Ewan McGregor on screen again as Obi-Wan Kenobi after it's been 15 years? No, 17 years since Revenge of the Sith came out. So, I mean, every time he was just on screen, my pupils were just dilated. I love me some Ewan McGregor.
He is an absolutely holy crap. That did come out in 2005, didn't it?
Hmm.
He
We're
he
old.
is a gorgeous individual.
I know and the hair. They did it so well. They did it so well.
We'll get into the flashback sequences with him and Hayden Christensen, because I do have to admit I loved the memes that they created.
Oh
Um,
my god, right?
I know for me this was probably the weakest starting series, especially I'd say the first two episodes, as far as pacing and one of the issues with like trying to create artificial tension when we know how it's all going to end. Um,
I see what you mean there.
However, I will say, from start to finish, as a hey, we're going to do a complete story. It wrapped itself up nicely, and I think smells like it is the best ending of any Star Wars like series movie. I think it is the one with the strongest and the best ending.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I would put it up there with Rogue One, just because Rogue One's third act is one to be rivaled within the Star Wars universe. I mean, it has a little bit of everything, capped off by, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Rogue one of the best Darth Vader scenes to exist pre-Kenobi, um, where he's just cutting through people in a hallway. It's like
Mm-hmm.
with a butter knife. That's what it looked like. It was just a butter knife.
Uh, yeah, I would say like so far, I will say this series included um the the cast of character, what they've done for Vader to make him this horrifying menace, especially because we see him, as middle aged, a little bit over the hill. Sorry, not even middle aged. Like we see him fair enough over the hill. Our first sequence is him like crushing a guy's windpipe and lecturing his daughter about being a traitor and a spy. Uh, Other than that, like he doesn't have too many points where we see him and we get this terrifying. It's just his presence is menacing. But now we actually, for the first time, got to, or like I'd say recently, I would say, um, it happened a tiny amount in Rebels, Fallen Order. I thought it was absolutely beautifully done, and now Kenobi has done it in a way that I think was desperately needed.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And I think Kenobi is one of the first times within the Star Wars universe that I was mortified in what I was seeing. The scenes with Darth Vader were more so out of a horror movie than anything. I mean, some of the most beautifully shot, I guess, jump scares have been within this series. There's that scene where Vader's essentially hunting Obi-Wan. They weren't on Jabin. They were on the mining world.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like Kenobi's wandering through the fields, and then all of a sudden Vader ignites his lightsaber, just about stole my heart away. So I think Kenobi. I agree with you that they really it definitely had the weakest start of
Mhm.
any of the Star Wars projects that have come out through Disney, um, but just they built their way to such a wonderful third act that I think if you look at the product as a whole, it's phenomenal.
Oh, I completely agree. Um, and like so, just so you guys aren't like we're looking at this, I'm someone who is probably out of both, I'll say, the least critical of Star Wars. Because I will enjoy something Star Wars just because it's Star Wars. And I know for some people it's like it doesn't mean I can't be critical, but it also is something where I'm like, no, I like if you're going to tell me a story in Star Wars, I will enjoy it for the fact that you're trying something different in Star Wars. Um, so I think we should start with the beginning. Once again, we're seeing Order 66,
Painful. It never gets any less painful at all.
and
And
it's
seeing some live action clones for the first time, it blew my mind.
thank you to the 501st for showing up to help out with this one
Yeah,
again.
kept the project under budget.
Oh my,
So
yeah, just all the cosplayers like, yeah, we'll be in Star Wars. Let's do this.
yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody, especially at this point in time, would turn down a role in Star Wars, much less um, a show highly as anticipated as Kenobi. Because, I mean, I've been waiting for Ewan McGregor to make his return since Revenge of the Sith, because you just had essentially this 20-year gap between, you know, Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and Obi-Wan's just chilling in the desert. It's
Yeah,
kind of it's kind of how I feel about Yoda on Dagobah. Shout out Yoda, did nothing for this series. Congratulations,
I'm glad. I'm glad that we didn't see him. I like the fact that it's that like it kept everything so so well hidden.
Yeah, really. I think you're right. We haven't in terms of the other Jedi, we didn't really get to see what, with the exception of the first one, who rode into town asking for Kenobi's help, and got turned away by this broken form of Obi-Wan Kenobi. You could see the last 10 years were just absolute hell for him.
So
Um,
why don't we actually start there? We'll start hitting like the story points,
mhm.
just so you guys have like a clear segue. Um, so this is gonna be what the first episode.
Yeah, yeah, first episode. Um, really, we get to see Obi-Wan back on Tatooine, working a butcher's job, watching his coworkers get extorted, doing nothing about it, very un-Jedi like. Um, and he's so very obviously haunted over the events that had happened 10 years ago. I mean, with everything, the fall of the Jedi Order, Anakin turning to the dark side, it really left him with just such a trauma that he cut himself off from the Force. And seeing Obi-Wan, Mr. Unassailable Jedi poster boy, as broken as that, was really heartbreaking to see. But I'm glad we got to see that other side of his character, because it's not a Kenobi that really came out much through any other Star Wars project.
Yeah, even himself when he was in A New Hope, you felt that he was like, oh, he's still a Jedi. He's a little bit older. He's a little bit out there. He's a little bit different. Um, but one of the things that I really liked for the first series, especially or the first episode, was they did like probably two or three just clips of him going back or cutting the meat, cutting off the piece for himself slash his mount, and doing that like two to three times. Like that was it. It was they went to the crate dragon, they cut it up, and they did that. So you easily got to see, well, what's Kenobi been up to? Oh, Oh,
He's working a 9 to 5. Yeah.
yeah, he's just doing this, and he's not even doing like it's not even the fact that I would be like, oh, he's doing a 9 to 5. He is doing something that's like not like nothing's going to be appreciated. Like he would could be fired easily without anything, and that's it. And it almost looked like were they paying him in portions?
They were. Yeah.
So I like that kind of brought that in canonically, especially when you think about living on Tatooine being this rock in this desert. Um,
Yeah, it honestly gave me a little bit of a shout out to the Force Awakens. You know, different planet, say different planet, different desert, same portions. In the beginning where Rey's working her scavenger duties.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, that was really nice to see. Like, this isn't some great Jedi master who has been plotting for the last 10 years on like how to, bring an end to the Empire. This is a man who is is broken and scarred, and he'd given up hope, really.
Oh God, yes.
I don't know if he really had a plan at that point on what to do with Luke. It really didn't seem like it. I mean, he was living in a cave guarded by what I only could imagine is a buried R4.
Yeah, R4 is literally buried, and you just see his Astro thing pull up that one time, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, it made me really wonder. I guess Kenobi really didn't own a droid. He buried the last one. But yeah, so with that first episode, getting to see the introduction of the Inquisitors
Hmm.
was very nice to see as well. I think it's crazy how close they were to Kenobi just in the first place. Um, and the fact that Riva, who's been a polarizing character in her own right, I think it's crazy how we got to see some sort of interaction between Riva and Owen.
Hmm.
And I really enjoyed the scenes with Riva where she's interrogating the town on where to find Kenobi or any Jedi for that matter. And you had that one citizen like, "This is the Outer Rim. Like the Empire has no ground here," and she just cuts off the hand. Like it to me, Inquisitors have always meant business, and it's nice to see, you know, them in their live action debut, really backing up that kind of statement. It's like if you don't answer the questions, there goes your hand. Congratulations. Because I mean, that's really all the Inquisitors have been in my mind, They just they terrorize everybody and everything. They're just agents of the dark side.
And what I think really separates the Inquisitors from Sith or from Dark Jedi, like if we're gonna go down the entirety of like all the lore, right? If we're gonna say, hey, let's walk down this for a moment. Um, One of the things that I really like is that they felt like common thugs. Like, sure, they had a lightsaber, and I mean, we're gonna say they could use the Force, but especially when you got to see Vader use the Force, and this is a personal problem with me. Like Kenobi used the Force at the end. Um, I never felt like it's like yeah they do the Kylo Ren thing where they're like pulling the body here. She's like trying to tap the mind, but at no point was ever like you're not menacing with this. Like you're like I have a cool trick and I can do these three things really well. But you can see that there's this wealth of a gap between any one of the Inquisitors and any like properly trained Jedi Knight or somebody who's gone through most of the training. Um, Especially when it looks like when you see her, this is gonna be like first set of spoilers. Like she was a youngling who was stabbed by Anakin, and she was still in the Jedi Temple when the Jedi were pulling younglings to go into combat with them, and they were also helping with the Warfront. We saw that with Ahsoka, and then we saw that again in the Bad Batch when we saw Kanan and his Jedi Master, and he was actively out there as a child with the General,
Mm-hmm.
and we
Child
see,
soldiers, not
yeah,
not a great look. Jedi, not a
no,
great look.
it's a terrible. But with her, like they were doing their like forms, their like Tai Chi forms, but I at no point did I ever go, oh, you have strength. At no point, like heralding back to the what's it called, Jedi Fallen Order, when we fought the third sister or fifth sister, the big one. She never felt imposing like the third or the second sister did when she was like, oh, we learned she was further along as a Jedi. So I like that it feels like, hey, here's the Inquisitor. Whatever state they were at, that's about all they got. Then we just made them angry and gave them a spinning lightsaber. I never once go, oh, you're on the same level as a Jedi. The only reason you're winning is like force of number, and you're hunting people down who are tired and always on the run. Like you're literally hunting down almost wounded prey.
Yeah, and I mean, by the time we get to the setting at Kenobi, the majority of the Jedi are kaput. I mean, there are only a few kind of roaming around the galaxy. Speaking of a few, got a huge name drop in Quinlan.
Yes.
It's so nice to know that Quinlan Voss is still kicking out there. He was somebody on the list of Jedi who would survive the purge that I was really hoping we were going to see, but I'll settle for a name drop in Kenobi. Um,
And I like that when we get introduced to him in the Clone Wars, Kenobi's like, I have to work with, and then here we see it as Quinlan, like he's still alive. This, like there's this immediate like, oh, thank God he's still alive. He's a very good person.
yeah, it was really nice to it's it's almost like a classmate you haven't seen in like 15 years. It's like they annoyed you at the time, but it's
Mm-hmm.
you hear somebody not drop their name and they're like, ah, man, calls back to better times, and I can only imagine that Kenobi had a moment of peace after he saw Quinlan's name. It's like, Quinlan, what adventures Quinlan and I had back in the day, before
Chasing down a
the
hut.
hey, hey, the hut.
That's true.
Shout out to Zero, the most menacing New Orleans New
in
Orleans
their
hut to ever grace the universe.
in their bog planet. But and so I have a question. Like, so one of the things that we got to see real quick, and I thought this was a great trope, and this was a great motif throughout all of it, was the different tactics the Inquisitors were using to hunt a Jedi. They talked about the Jedi in the town, the Inquisitors walking to the bar, the Grand Inquisitor's there, the Fifth Brother's there, and she's what, second sister or third sister?
Third sister.
Third sister. Second sister was in, okay, Fallen Order. Um, and they're like, it takes patience. And the Grand Inquisitor is talking to the bartender, and she's like, look, this takes too long, and like hurls the knife at him, and then we see the Jedi like focusing, and even when you see him using the Force, like she threw a knife, and I'm like, okay, he caught that. His hands up, but you could tell it's more practice with the Force than any of them are. But at the same time, it felt like when we saw him, I'm like, how cut off are you also from the Force? Are you just like using little bits here and there occasionally, or is it something where you're kind of actively practicing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it really kind of puts into focus, I guess, the state of the Force at this period of the galaxy. I think it's not just I mean, the Force obviously is way out of balance
Mm-hmm.
um, during the events of Kenobi, and really, it's not all that used anymore. It's like during the Republic, you had the Jedi running around um, solving trade disputes. Just common Jedi thing to do. Uh, but no, also just like on different frontiers, you could find them all throughout the galaxy. Like seeing a Force user at that point wasn't really um, uncommon, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you get closer to the New Hope, and you have somebody like Han Solo who doesn't even think the Force is real. That is a myth. Um, and so I think we're closer and closer to that point in Kenobi. So it's not much of a stretch to say that Jedi and the Inquisitors, for that matter, are as powerful as you, I guess, would want them to be. You know what I'm trying to say?
they and I gotta say there as far as the Inquisitors, like when she threw the knife, I did like seeing them be like, no, use patience, and she's like, no, this actually takes too long, and she gets him up, and then when she goes out to like talk, um where were we before that happened?
Talking about Riva and the fact that it was taking too long with the Grand Inquisitor's monologue.
Yeah, and so she then turns around and goes out into the field, and that's where she confronts Owen after Owen like finds Kenobi, because Kenobi's you see him watching Luke, but he's doing it from afar. I like how he sees Luke the boy and the child, because I think that is incredibly incredibly important to him, or important to like see, especially coming off with like, hey, the fall of the Jedi Order, and you don't like they essentially would come to you and say, hey, you don't have a choice, give us your kid, um or give us your kid for protection, because if a Sith gets him, like, your kid's not going to have a choice and neither are you. And this kind of the way they more or less spun it, especially like in one of the episodes with Cad Bane, when Cad Bane has the holocron and is going around trying to kidnap some younglings, but we she has this conversation, and he's like, nope, we get to see her like talk to Owen and go, you have a family. We see some of the Force like mind reading abilities in there, but it's pretty small.
Hmm.
And then we kind of get to see Kenobi hiding, and almost he wasn't almost, he was cowering before these Inquisitors, when especially come later with Ahsoka in Rebels, like we know that they could job. Like if he would practice a little bit, he could easily job them if it wouldn't be the fact that he would be putting Luke in danger. But just seeing like the level of violence and brutality, um, that they were willing to go through, I thought was absolutely amazing. Especially since it's like, hey, the war's over, but
Yeah,
here the
yeah,
Inquisitors aren't.
yeah. They're not really. I mean, in some cases, especially after the fall of the Republic, the war never really ended.
No.
Um, it was really just the prelude to the Civil War, and that's what happens with the Empire in their lovely galaxy-wide occupation. But yeah, I think it was fantastic to see the brutality of the Inquisitors on display throughout the first two episodes. Um, and something I didn't see when this series premiered was the introduction of a young Leia. I did not see that coming. I knew if Obi-Wan was to get off Tatooine, it better have been pretty damn important.
Yes.
Did not think Leia was going to be the reason.
And the fact that it establishes like, hey, they do know each other, especially since it now sounds like at the end of this, it's like, oh, when she reached out in New Hope, like, you fought with my father during the Clone Wars, and like she sounds more familiar to him, so she would have at least known who of him and known who he was. Because I think does she call him like General Kenobi
Mm-hmm.
in A New
In
Hope?
A New Hope, yes, it's
Yeah,
General Kenobi. With it's like you served my father in the Clone Wars. Yeah,
and which I'm like, oh, that's fantastic, and them to kind of bring that together, which means like she's going to start getting stories about how great he was or who that was supposed to be. But you're right, Leia, and I think we should talk about that, because to me Leia, is one of the best parts of the entire series, and I'm going to say she's one of the worst.
I think I loved the little Leia. I'm very much on that side. I can only think of a couple of instances where I wasn't the happiest with the character. Um, mainly mainly in episode 2 when they get to Dayu. Wasn't the best fan of Leia in that instance. Overall though, I think they did a really good job encapsulating, you know, what Leia would have been like as a child.
Hmm.
I mean, she in many ways Leia is the rebellion. Um and later on the resistance in the sequels. So to see her kind of take on that that role as a kid was really nice to see. But I'm curious, why do you think you know she was some of the worst?
So this is my biggest issue with the entire series is the manufactured tension. Um, you can tell a great story knowing where it starts to end. One of my favorite things to do is to pick up a book and read the last chapter before I even start reading the book. Why? Because I want to see where we're going to end up. But the thing is,
That's bold. That's
you have
that's bold.
but you have no context. So I could give you a random book and say, "Hey, read the last chapter," and it'd be like, "Okay," and this happened, this happened, this happened. And you're like, I don't know how we got here." And then the question is, can you remember all that as you're reading the story and getting sucked into these characters? Sometimes I don't. Like if there's like an ongoing series, I won't. But if it's like I'm picking up this new series for the first time, I'll gladly do that. Here, we aren't really given that luxury. We know where Kenobi has to start and we know where it has to end. So one, when Leia was getting kidnapped and she's like running away, the 10-year-old child running away from fully grown aliens.
Yes. Yeah. She's got little legs,
Yeah,
little quick legs. She knows the forest better than them. That's really the only defense I can give. I can give that scene.
maybe if it was shot better, I would say yes, that those are all accurate. But she like crawls under a bush that like you could have stepped through or walked around, and like I have a problem with that scene. The second scene I have a problem, and this isn't necessarily her fault; it's just her being there when she fell off the building.
Really? Hmm,
I have,
okay.
and that's going to be my I'm going to say probably my biggest criticism of this was pacing with Kenobi getting his mojo back. Um, I think that her falling should have been one of the last sequences, even after him like holding back the water. I think that should have like come before her falling because it's like once he did that, I was like, okay, he's got the force back, and that was it. To me, it was just like, nope, you saved the most important person because she has plot armor, and it didn't feel earned. It felt so like it felt like someone was like, "Oh, we need to make him catch Leia," and they're like, "Well, where do we put this in the movie or in the series? We don't have it anywhere else," so they just threw it there.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and I think that really overarches into another Disney kind of Disney shortcoming when it comes to Star Wars. Their chase scenes are not that great, and they ran into the same issue with the Book of Boba Fett. Um, when the major domo, for the mayor,
Mm-hmm.
was escaping with his speeder through town, and the mods were chasing them. I
Oh
was just
yeah.
sitting there, and I was like, you could run alongside the speeder. Why call it a speeder if it's going like a leisurely pace through Mos Espa? Maybe it's just a Tatooine, or not a Tatooine thing, because Leia and Obi-Wan were on Daiyu, but their chase scenes in Star Wars just have not been the same, especially when you compare them to the prequels, specifically Attack of the Clones. When Anakin and Obi-Wan are hunting down that bounty hunter.
Oh yeah. And he's like, "Oh, Matt," and yeah. Oh god, that was such good dialogue. Really, like, yeah. It
Yeah. So really, that feeds into a more Disney shortcoming.
that direction. Whether it's Dave Filoni or the stunt team or just not having that part done. That being said, everything else about little Leia, one, her attitude, two, how competent she felt, because when we got to see her in Rebels as well, as like the 15, 16-year-old who also had to figure out like, hey, how do we make it look like, we're not just giving ships to the rebellion, you know, and we already get to see her craftiness. And I'm gonna call force sensitivity, especially the first episode where she's like dressing down her cousin.
Oh, talk about a scene. That was so well done. Everything from the dialogue. But you're totally right. Throughout this series, it made it seem like Leia just had this natural connection with understanding people.
Mm-hmm.
And you could definitely chalk that down into force sensitivity, which really, I guess, makes you wonder how the Inquisitors or Darth Vader for that matter didn't sense it. Um, that was one of the major, I guess, not concerns, but issues I had with all of Leia's time with Riva.
Hmm.
But I guess you could say that Riva really, in her essence, was not an Inquisitor. Although we're getting to more of that later. But how do you not see that this girl is strong with the Force when she's aided by it? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Especially what that's episode four,
Four.
four, where like the interrogation's happening, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. No, completely. What did so one of the other areas that I liked? What did you think of what was it? Episode, I think it was episode 2 or 3, where we got to meet Frick,
Oh right, yeah.
Seth Rogen,
Yeah, Mr. Happy Go Lucky. Oh, just support my empire.
but
Um,
genuine. He like
yeah,
we don't get to see many people who genuinely are like the Empire. He's like, no, we need a little bit of law and order. The Republic fell apart, and they were fighting themselves, and the Jedi were fighting other Jedi, and like you could easily see it was kind of like a herald back to Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2, where one of your first conversations on the main planet, like the first city planet, is like, no, the Jedi, you guys are terrible. It's like, no, that was the Sith. And he's like, I don't care. You all are, wizards with laser swords. Like, you're all the problem. And we get to see Frick here, who's like, no, I'm just here, doing my thing. And I'm like, hey guys, your transport's late. Let me help you get a ride.
yeah. It was nice. It was nice to see because it is one of the only instances we get to see of people in the galaxy supporting the Empire. I think it was most recently done in the Bad Batch too, the Bad Batch season 1, where they're bringing in some of the first iterations of stormtroopers, and one of the stormtroopers is saying that the Empire keeps him housed, fed, health care. I mean, essentially the only reason you join the U.S. Army. Uh,
Yeah.
so it, it's nice to know that not everybody is against the Empire in the galaxy. Uh, that being said, I also think that Star Wars is still very conflicted on ray shields, and that scene kind of confused me a little bit. It's you know I understand having a checkpoint
Mm-hmm.
on which is that makes sense,
Yeah.
but I mean any man with a speeder could have easily just taken it right alongside the hill,
Yes.
or simply gone a different way. It's as ineffective as a border wall, really, because I mean, eventually it's just going to end. You can just go around. It's one of the issues I had with the wall in Game of Thrones. I
And you
guess
mean like the
maybe this
same
is
issue we're
just
having with our own border wall in the south, where it just ends
yeah,
randomly and you can walk around it?
yeah, exactly. Maybe now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I just have a thing against walls.
I
But
mean, our history with wall. Look at the Great Wall of China. How did Genghis Khan? How did the Khans conquer China? They walked around.
see, hey, you heard it here first, guys. Walls do not work. Um, but yeah, no, I thought that scene was nice. Getting introduced to Tala's character was phenomenal. I loved the progression of her character. It was nice to see somebody who at first joined the Empire and then saw all of the horrible things it was really doing across the galaxy and decided, nope, this is not for me. I've got to atone for my sins, for the things I've done. It was good to see some of that energy as well. Tala was an absolute badass. There's no way around it. Just
The
I'm not sure what you thought about her, but she was actually one of my favorite parts of Kenobi, along with Roland.
I loved Tala. She was great. She was a little overshadowed to me by Loader Boy. Loader Boy's probably still like one of my favorite top 10 characters right now. Um, the her character coming in, because what we get to learn here is like the extent at which the Empire is dealing with force sensitive people, because it almost felt like what we learn is that she went to a village and they rounded up all the force sensitive people, and she's like, oh, we're gonna take them for like re-education or and they're like, no, kill them, kill the parents, kill the entire family, wipe out the village. And she's like, we weren't capturing them, we were killing them. And it almost felt like, oh, we're not even, the parents produced a force sensitive child, we're not going to give the parents a chance to have another child where that could possibly happen again.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty messed up. Um, Not one of the greatest galaxy wide policies, to tell
Yeah.
you the truth. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and I'm honestly, you could see as that scene was unfolding, just Tala's like the horror in her eyes. Like the, I've never been a fan of the Empire. I know there are a lot of people out there that adore it, think that the Empire is so cool. I'm not one of those people. I've always been very, very hard pro Republic. I also thought it was a cooler time in the Star Wars galaxy. The Empire kind of made everything mundane, and they popularized the color gray. And a galaxy without color is just dull. So, shout out to the old Republic. Um, yeah, but the loader droid really I thought was one of the unsung heroes of the show, and gone too soon. Just you got to pour one out for the loader droid.
And I liked the fact that it was it, so just to paint you guys like the imagery and what they were really going for here. Tala sat quietly by the first time the Empire, she saw something like that and let it happen. The loader droid is programmed to be completely silent, but and this gets into it, like, so Kenobi and Leia, she's kidnapped, he gets her back from the kidnappers, we get to see Spice, we get to see people strung out on Spice, which I thought was huge because we really don't see that.
No,
um
not at all, really.
they crash on
Spice is a hell of a
hell
drug.
of a drug, yeah.
Hell of a drug.
They crash land on an old farming planet that we can see as being like pilfered by the Empire, drained of its resources. We get to meet some characters, but when we meet Tala and we see what's going on here, then we meet the loader droid who hides them in the back of the shop and sits in there. And the stormtroopers come in and go, open up, and they're like getting all up in his face. And even Leia, when he meets her, like, oh, tries to talk to him, and they're like, she can't talk, they're not programmed to talk. You can see Obi-Wan being dismissive, like, I still don't really like droids, I've fought them for about 4 years, as well as everything else. And when they're hiding him, the fact that the stormtroopers are getting up in his face, and the one goes, they're programmed not to communicate, like, we don't program them to have them, their job is to load. But then you watch the hands around the droid's back tighten on a hammer, and I'm like, oh, we're about to see the armorer droid version. And it's, it's the actions speak louder than words. He can't talk, but we see, nah, he will go hard in a heartbeat if it means he can help these people.
Yeah, shout out to the loader droid. Really, um, I thought the imagery within that scene was really really superb too. Just the way they shot it. The view of the hammer was really well done.
And then I suppose we should go right up to the very next scene that
Oh
that
no.
one that entails.
Oh god, do we have to?
Oh, we have to, because this is, so after this, well, the Inquisitor contacts Vader. She's our, oh yeah, we should probably talk about that. Reva's character has her own confrontation where she's hunting down uh Kenobi on the city planet. Um, which, by the way, all the characters in that, I love the fact that they were like, hey, things haven't changed for us. Everyone here is still destitute. He meets someone peddling spice and is like, I'm looking for my daughter. And she's like, if she's here, she's lost. I used to be someone's daughter too. Take a couple of these and don't worry, you won't even remember you had a daughter. Like, what the fuck, Disney? Okay.
Little out of left field. tiny, tiny, tiny bit for them. We think of Disney as the family friendly version of Star Wars. That is not family friendly.
And the fact that right before that we saw the clone trooper with obvious like this is probably 501st markings on him, like also begging for money. I was like, okay, so we're gonna tackle all of this in this place and how little either any government does for like their veterans or cleaning up like addiction as a problem. But we saw Reva, and the other thing is I like how she is so focused on getting Kenobi, because we kind of learn that Vader's been like, Kenobi doesn't know that Anakin survived. He left him there to die, and as far as he knows, he did. Anakin died, and then we learn Reva knows that he didn't die, became Darth Vader, and is so singularly focused on getting Obi-Wan Kenobi, and she becomes like embroiled on that passion too, where we see both of them with this singular mindset to get Kenobi, to the point where she kills the Grand Inquisitor, we think, and like disobeys direct orders to put out like a citywide hit on Kenobi in order to find them, as well as like uh knows to go after uh Alderon's, oh god, what's his name, to go after Leia, like because she orchestrates all of that, the kidnapping of Leia and everything, all to get to Kenobi.
Yeah, definitely one of the smarter Star Wars characters out there. I mean, it was just the approach to snuffing out Obi-Wan was really well done. I was very impressed. She was like, "Oh, I went into the archives and found out that there was a link between Bail Organa and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I'm gonna kidnap an Imperial senator's daughter to get him to come out of hiding." That
Bail
was
Organa, I could not remember his name.
yeah. That was a masterclass a move right there. Vader's playing checkers. Reva was playing 3D chess.
And then she uses that, of course, to be like, hey, I've got Kenobi on this planet. And we see Vader walk up and tell the Inquisitors to like stand by and stand down, and walks through a town with stormtroopers rounding up people, and we get to see Vader be an actual butcher.
It was mortifying. I mean, he crushed a father's windpipe, snapped his son's neck, and then was dragging a woman through town, force choking her as he was looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi because he knew that that was going to bring him out. That is by far the most brutal I have ever seen Darth Vader, period. And
Yeah, like
I don't know about you, but I wasn't prepared for that episode at all. I remember we had a watch party over here for each of the Kenobi episodes, the afternoon that they aired, and like my heart rate was just through the roof for those last 30 minutes. I mean, talk about a brutal, I guess, pure introduction to Vader into the series, and that leads up into the next scene. Obi-Wan's trying to do the honorable thing and say, get Leia out of here. Let me distract Vader and just make sure make sure Leia gets home. And we get to see Obi-Wan and Vader lock lightsabers again for the first time since their epic duel on Mustafar. And and Vader beats the absolute daylight out of him. It's not a contest. He is just hacking away at Kenobi. Like there was no contest. I mean, Cal Kestis gave him a better run in Fallen Order.
and you got one swing on him. That was it.
Yeah, one swing, and you know what? That swing was better than what Kenobi put up in that fight. He was outclassed. He was outclassed the entire go, and really, that's when you get into the scene where it looks like Kenobi's done for. There's fire between them, and Vader drags him along the hot coals. And that was one of the first times that I'd ever felt Anakin in that suit instead of just the heartlessness of Vader. That was personal. That
Yes.
was insanely, insanely personal. And, Vader didn't want to kill Obi-Wan. He didn't want to kill him there. He wanted to make him suffer. He, I could only imagine what he had lined up as a torture routine had that allowed to continue. Thankfully, for Obi-Wan's sake, it wasn't, because I
The
could not see that ending well for him.
the other thing I think there is Vader wanted to hurt him, but when because he was wailing on Kenobi, he's like, you're not Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was fighting Ben Kenobi here, not Obi-Wan, Ben. And when you think about it that way, I'm like, oh, this is a very different person that you're fighting. You are not fighting the Jedi Master. He's used the Force like twice here, and both times have been like by the skin of his teeth, just barely. Um,
Yeah.
but like he gets away, and we get to see him get away. Of course, we see Leia get captured. And actually, you know what? We did forget something since we kind of skipped over Reva's character. I feel like there's an honorable mention that we need to talk about real quick,
Yeah, okay.
and that is Kamal Nahani's or Najiani's character, Haja,
Yes,
the fake
Haja. How
Jedi.
how could we skip over dear Haja? Scammer extraordinaire. Um, you know, I don't. There have been like a few grumblings about Hodge's character, but listen, I thought he was a good guy. He's scamming people out of money, but in the end, he's getting those people to where they need to be. Like there's much worse scum and villainy in the galaxy than Haja getting an extra few credits. You know what I'm saying?
And I like how he says, he goes, look, yes, I'm taking their money, but I'm actually getting them to safety. And his all of his theatrics, everything, I was like, no, if you're gonna sell somebody who's run off in hiding, but you're secretly helping, like he was doing it the absolute best way possible.
And
And
I thought the character was so well done too. I every time Haja was on screen, it just resulted in a lot of laughs.
he did
It's
steal every scene he was in.
he really did. Very well done. Like shout out to the actor. It's just like a good chef's kiss to him. And Haja, I think, serves a really important purpose to Kenobi, that it really, you know, exemplifies Kenobi's trust issues, which I mean is
Valid.
understandable. Yeah, completely valid. You know, the Republic fell, the Jedi Order was exterminated, his best friend turned to the dark side. Those tend to uh, tend to crop up some personal issues you may need to go to therapy for. Um, because yeah, I would be so trusting after that.
and and like even like going kind of off of that, uh like I did love his character because every time we got to meet him after that, he was like, oh, for whatever a disgraced fraud Jedi is. And Kenobi later on he goes, that's kind of like, whatever you can trust me for. And he goes, you know what, that's perfect, you're exactly what I need right now, I trust you. And he constantly is telling him to, like, hey, do more for me, do more for me, do this. And I thought that was great. I loved his character in there, so we kind of get to see like some people still know who the Jedi are, and they can use them. Like when you go, it's some hokey tricks. Like Han Solo said, "Oh no, I'm wondering, have we got more Solo movies? If he would help a fake Jedi, like try to go into hiding and smuggle him out, and then be like, oh, you're just a lie. It's just some cheap trick that you're doing to levitate. Like it's not
Oh my
real."
god, that's such a fantastic idea.
Yeah, Solo Part Two. Like, oh, he smuggles a Jedi at some point, and the Jedi does just Haja.
It's just Haja. That's actually maybe you should pitch that
Go pitch that over to Dave
to
Filoni.
Disney.
Yeah,
Hey,
Dave Filoni, and
why not?
see what they say.
Why not? I mean, I want a second Solo movie. I'm not sure if I'm in a lot of agreement with how people convey Solo, but whatever. Uh, that's a podcast for another time. Um, but I mean, it makes sense. You get more Haja, you get more Chewie, get to see a continuation of Maul, perhaps. Um, but kind of aiming back toward Kenobi, I really enjoyed the progression of Haja's character, and it was nice to see Kenobi become more trusting of him as time went on. Because really, what other better option was there? You know?
Yeah, he was the perfect character, and I like how you saw that he was a fraud right away. Like you were meant to see that he was a fraud, and Kenobi confirmed it for you really easy. But like going back to that, like so after that, when it becomes okay, they need to, Leia gets kidnapped by Reva again, technically Reva again, and they go to the Inquisitor planet. And here, I think is this is where I felt like the show started to ramp up in some of the better ways where um and some of the worst ways. One, every fight sequence here was terrible. uh Second, her like Talia's the entire sequence where she's like sitting on the comm, and the comm looks like she has to like ball her hand into a fist like to do it, like all the security protocol, like I think that was one of the worst sets for the entire series. She like goes back, kills one of the guard, or kills the watch officer. But I like how at the end she's like, nope, I'm the spy, I'm a double agent, to get Riva away so that Kenobi could break out little Leia.
Yeah, yeah. No, so I enjoyed all of the Fortress Inquisitoria scenes. It just felt a little too much drawn from Fallen Order. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, we'd already been there, we'd already literally just done that maybe like 3 years ago.
Outside of the tombs were
Tombs were amazing.
amazing, but also really creepy. That's that's some dark side baggage right there.
Yeah.
It's one thing to kill a Jedi, but you really gotta entomb them down there. Like we had that scene where Kenobi's hiding from the stormtroopers, which was a good call back to A New Hope. Um, but if you had the subtitles on, you could hear them like faintly talking about how creepy the place was.
Yeah.
And I just thought about the poor stormtrooper who was assigned to sanitation and just had to
Mm.
clean down there all the time. Well, could you imagine cleaning a tomb full of Jedi just staring at you?
And honestly, one of the things that I enjoyed about it is it brought credence to Rebels, where Kanan is trying to get Ezra to Shock T, I think it is,
No,
uh,
Luminara.
Luminara,
Yes.
and it's like, oh no, they captured in this, and there's every possibility the Force could still be screaming out. Um, so it almost feels like no, these could still have a purpose to serve the Empire. Um, and I thought that's kind of what it might have been for. I think if they would have had something in there of like, oh, hey, the like Obi-Wan could feel them screaming or something else instead of him just being like, just get me away. Like his response was completely correct. Like the horror of like, we just need to get out of here and I will never talk about this again. But also I'm like, knowing what we know about what happens later on, I was like, okay, I would have liked just a little bit more.
I think
Um,
I think we're all in that same boat too. While it was really awful to see my guy Tara Sunube,
yes.
oh god, that's rough. Imagine your first appearance in a live action being being your corpse in a tomb
Yeah, Corpse Skull.
in a Sith fortress. That's that's rough.
Um,
Um, yeah, I really wish we could have seen more of that. I was hoping to see maybe one or two more Jedi that we would have recognized.
mhm.
Um, I was. I mean, I didn't expect to see Terrace Nube. That was a. I can almost guarantee that Dave Filoni was really pushing for that.
Oh yeah.
Made me feel super bad for him because when we see him in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, he is in his sunset years, getting close to that retirement age, um, and then just gets just brutally murdered.
Yeah.
Um, really shows that Anakin had no chill. Younglings, old people, like there was nothing he wasn't slicing down at the temple that night.
Yeah, and like seeing the youngling there frozen as well is like it very much felt like this is a different form of carbonite. Whereas like because carbonite was almost like a flash freezing, but it doesn't look like it goes all into their system. It just gets the outside. It really made me feel almost uh almost like you know how amber is like amber's like you get it's hardened molasses.
Yeah, exactly. It looked almost exactly like Amber.
I was like, oh shit, like they trapped you all in amber. You all drowned in that. I mean just like peaceful poses almost. Yeah,
Shout out to that youngling.
shouts out youngling. So this is also the other series where the other part where I'm gonna say pacing and force to me were a little out of scale here. Because Obi-Wan does the hearken where he does back to like a New Hope, and he does the little mind trick of there's a noise over there, and he makes a boom, and you see him kind of wince like I did not mean to make it that loud, and then just like barely 20 minutes later he's holding back water.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really find issue with it too much, just because he knew what the stakes were, and I kind of read that scene more as like it's a fight or flight moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's you you're gonna live or die here, buddy. That's really all that scene kind of conveyed to me. I didn't really have a problem with the pacing too much there.
And surprisingly, I know this one might be unpopular for some people. I know even Mrs. Play had a bit of issue. His rescue sequence against the two stormtroopers that were getting Leia. I know a lot of people do not like the chamber or the like throne room fight scene from The Last Jedi. It is not liked. I hear you. I know people like the shots are weird. I know some of the fighting, like where she just like smacks the stormtrooper's head, like she would almost like break his nose, but he's wearing a full face mask. Doesn't always
Hmm.
make sense. But I know Mrs. Play is like, wouldn't he want to get closer to Leia so that way he could better protect her? And I'm like, no, the room's dark. The only thing they have is like his glowing sword comes on, it cuts through somebody, and then it goes out. And then he, sprints over. The other one just heard this sound, just saw his buddy die. So he's freaking out. And it now looks like you're fighting a Jedi and you've never fought one before. I thought it was actually a super, super well done scene where it's like yeah, okay, he's getting it back. We see him kind of getting it back, doing his thing, but it still felt like I could screw this up.
Yeah, I think it was a good middle point for the series as a whole. You know, he's definitely in that kind of in that shaky middle ground there. And I thought it was really cool that that scene almost was identical to one of the Force Unleashed scenes with Star Killer, and he's like going to rescue. I think it's Ram Koda was his master in that game. Um, but that was almost identical to a scene in that video game, which was cool to see in live action. I'm one of those people who loved the throne room scene
Me
in
too.
Last Jedi. It was well done. I don't care. The Star Wars community is too
Toxic.
polarizing. Yep. Hey, let's be nice. Let's be nice. I mean, you're not wrong, but let's be nice.
Okay. You're right. Polarizing is the word I will
Toxic, yeah, you're right. um, I thought that was a well done scene. In Kenobi, also thought it was really well done. Um, I don't think Disney really gets lightsabers right all that much, though. Um, in the prequels, I think that was the best grasping of what a lightsaber can really do. It's supposed to cut right through you. It's a beam of pure light, for Christ's sake. I mean, you see what it does to metal doors, and it took, I think, Kenobi 3 whacks at one of those stormtroopers for him to actually go down. And that one felt just a little silly to me in that scene because you and I both know how cheap stormtrooper armor is.
so so here's this is going to be how I'm taking that scene.
Hmm.
We're going to hearken to both Rebels and now the Book of Boba Fett when the dark saber's being used, and Kanan is training what's her name to use the dark saber,
Oh yeah, Sabine.
Sabine. So he talks about, do you feel how heavy it is? Do you feel how it pushes and pulls with it? One of the things that I thought here, and how I personally took this as well, was Obi-Wan really hasn't used a lightsaber in a hot minute. So he had to do three hacks, and you're saying, yeah, how to do this. Like, you can get a really sharp sword and still butcher it going through somebody's armor. So what I took it as, yeah, it's a beam of light. Yes, it should go right through people. However, like, even when we look at like how Rey fights with it versus how Kylo fought with it, uh like when she turns it on and it goes through the head, like the beam coming out was just like, oh, this is how it behaves, so this is how it worked. But here, when Kenobi's doing it, this is someone who's like, okay, I know how this is supposed to work, and at the same time, it's not how it's working. It's not working the way that he remembers it or the way that it's supposed to feel. So that's why I took it. And even like when he's blocking bolts, like we see him later on, like, okay, he starts to deflect bolts, but it's not pretty. It's not like the Kenobi from the Clone Wars. It's not even like the Kenobi at any other point. It's even Cal Kestis when you got his lightsaber out just barely. I was like, oh, it felt like he remembered more how to use that lightsaber because he kept it on him. Whereas Kenobi, it almost felt like it didn't belong in his hand, which
Well, I
is
mean,
what I
he
liked.
did bury it in the sand,
Yes.
which kind of surprised the corpse of General Grievous didn't come out for that thing. Rolling over in his grave, that poor droid is.
Yeah. But that was my pass there, especially when I'm like towards the end of it, I finally see him like, oh, if I swing it like this, I can knock a laser back at a stormtrooper. So I did think that there were points of that were done well, and honestly, like him using a lightsaber and his fights and battles were with a lightsaber to me better to explain like, oh, this is his current state.
Yeah, and um, I thought the ending off in that episode after they escape Inquisitorius um, was one of the actually I think the only scene I had an issue with Vader. You know, he's pissed off. Reva didn't give him a call. That Kenobi was literally there. Comes in super pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Force chokes Reva. I thought really. Granted, I love what Reva's character did after this. I mean, I can't believe Vader showed any restraint and that the neck wasn't just snapped immediately because he's done that to people for far less.
Very true.
Um, I thought it was a good touch about the whole tracking the ship aspect. Reva's cold for putting a a restraining bolt on Lola. That poor
Yeah,
droid. That poor droid went through it this series. It was
she
not a
did.
good series for droids actually.
No,
Between the loader droid and poor Lola, that's rough. Um, but that enters us into the final two episodes, which were phenomenal. We get to see flashbacks of Anakin and Obi-Wan, Hugh McGregor and Hayden Christensen in a sparring duel as Master and Padawan, which was so beautifully done. Um, I was in my feels that entire episode.
as you should be.
It it was everything I wanted, and I think Hayden. I mean, Hayden did his best Anakin acting in Kenobi. Um, and it's funny because Hayden Christensen in an interview for all the interviews for Kenobi actually said that he went back and he watched the animated series to get a better feel for Anakin to jump back into the character. So he watched Anakin's progression from Clone Wars to Rebels. When he becomes Darth Vader, um, and I thought he worked a lot of that into the show. especially into the flashback scenes. Because Anakin in the Clone Wars is almost exactly like that. He's very passionate. He's willing to do whatever it takes to win, but he's too impatient and shows off a little bit too much. And in that duel, I mean, that's exactly how it was. So getting to see them taking whacks at one another was just phenomenal again. Um, and that really launches us into the meat that the Empire's hot on this poor, not even rebel cell, just this. They called it the Path. Which, what did you think about the Path?
The obstacle's the way. I love the idea of the path. I liked it as being something a little bit. We're not quite the rebellion. We're not really fighting yet. We're just trying to get people. We're literally doing the best we can to just try to help people. And I thought that was absolutely one of the best, coolest ways to like go about that. Um, and I like that it's like we're not here to fight. We're not fighters. I think Rowan literally says we're not here to fight a war. Like we're not warriors. And then at the end of the Inquisitorium, when the one guy's snow speeder gets like, you know, dynamite hurled at it and it explodes, and you see his wingman like visibly she recoils. Um, I thought the path was absolutely fantastic. As look, we're just trying to do what we can because we know you guys are being hunted. We know that you're the protectors of the peace, um, and you did not deserve this.
No.
So I really enjoyed the path. Um, I one I thought the Hayden Christensen back and forth, like being like, okay, this is what Obi-Wan's thinking. He's remembering this. I'm guessing Darth Vader's remembering at the same time because that was supposed to be like that was pre that would have been pre Clone Wars. Like that would have been like still very early on in the Clone Wars because he still has Padawan Braid.
Yeah, he
He
does. It must have been. I doubt. I doubt it would have been just as the Clone Wars kicked off because they were so busy in the onset of the Clone Wars. So it must have been like just right before the events of Episode 2.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Um and I thought it was great. I loved how it was like you could clearly see that Anakin was a better fighter. Like he is a stronger, younger, more able-bodied fighter than Obi-Wan. However, Obi-Wan one uses the Force as his ally, and two is much more knowledgeable and is able to use Anakin's desire to win as as like his ultimate downfall. And he says that, and he goes, "Until you can overcome this part of yourself, you will remain a Padawan." Um,
Take a seat,
yeah,
young Skywalker.
very much so. Especially like thinking about that as well. Like I like just to see like that version of him versus the version of Anakin who walks up to the in the Bad Batch, walks up to the edge of the bridge and goes, "I'm here to surrender," and like casually just dodges rockets and lasers. Doesn't pull out a sword. Just you just see like his ability with the Force in that scene is so great, and I think it's gonna play so much better into late, like just like a few moments later in this very episode. Um, because I think this episode, so that's episode 5 out of 6, right?
Hmm. Which
This
sets us up for the big one, one of
episode,
the best finales, I think, to grace the Star Wars universe.
100% agree. Episode 5 had the best lightsaber battle period out of the entire show. Um, his fight with Riva, I still think is one of the best fights Vader will ever have as Vader. Um, like just better than when he fought Ahsoka, better than any other like cameos he's had. This was him, one, not using a lightsaber, two, breaking her lightsaber in half, which apparently I think they can just do that, and handing her part of it and saying, okay, now we're going to fight like Jedi. Because one of the things with that you're supposed to see when you do Star Wars is if you follow Bushido code, samurai use one sword at a time. You might see two on their hilt, but it depends. Like, well, the long one is for horse fighting, or fighting on cavalry. The shorter one is for close range, but you never use more than one at a time. So this was Darth Vader going like, okay, you want this shot? Here's a single blade. You are gonna fight me like we would, with some honor and some dignity. But watching him like just push her out of the way as if it's nothing, I thought it was the best fight of the entire series.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Yeah, that's Vader was disrespecting Reva that entire time. Even when he hands her the lightsaber and says, "Fight me in that kind of honorable way," was still disrespectful. I mean, I mean, the line really says it all. It's like, do you really think I would not see youngling?
Yeah,
That is just. I would have paid good money to see that episode in theaters and just the gasp of that line, because I don't know how you were in it, but I just jaw was on the floor. I mean, you can't just say that, man. That's God. Add insult to injury.
it also makes you think,
You get stabbed in the gut, and you get just talked down from Vader.
after being made the Grand Inquisitor for all of like 30 seconds. Um,
Hey, 35. Give her the 35,
give her
and
such
then
credit.
you also have the Return of the Grand Inquisitor in that scene, who's just that was the most just I guess thuggish scene I've ever seen. She gets stabbed. He comes up for they were in that camera angle looking up like from Reva's position, and you just see him just like step up next to Vader, like you're like, it's me. I'm here. I'm alive. Of course I was.
Yeah,
You
and I love how
shouldn't have doubted it.
he's like revenge is such a great motivator to stay alive, and it's like, god damn, is that not like a powerful scene? Um, but yeah, that entire fight I think is the best. The callback also to Force Unleashed, ripping apart a spaceship. Like, it tries to take off, he brings it down, rips it apart, and the other one just punches it out of there while he's so distracted ripping apart the other ship.
Yeah, I think that really brings it into the overarching thing of this. Really showed Vader's emotions throughout the series. It's a fixation on Kenobi,
Yes.
and it threw him off his game. Um, and we're getting to one of the last cameos. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Mister Evil 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 envisioned himself. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I loved everything about the ending of that episode. Um, Reva just imagine getting stabbed by the same dude twice
In the
in the
same
stomach.
spot. Yeah, like, here's one other thing I want to point out though. Vader goes, "Did you not think I would notice youngling?" Do you think the Anakin inside of him knows every single Jedi he killed?
I'd have to imagine so.
Like, I'm like, oh, how tormented are you? Is the reason that you keep them all at the Inquisitorium like, I need them far enough away from me, but also close? Like, I have to imagine that there's something there. Like, yeah, of course, he would probably feel it through the Force, but like I said, when she swings on him, and it's just he just stops it, and it almost I it was the perfect amount of force, if that makes sense, of using the force. If he would have pulled a Yoda and like turned off her lightsabers and then took them away from her, I'd have been like, okay, that's a little bit too strong. Like, you should be that strong. Were you actually a master? But you never got that thing, that right bestowed upon you. Uh
Oh man.
because like that when you saw Yoda do that, that was the debut episode of the Clone Wars. You saw Asajj Ventress and you saw Yoda turn off her damn lightsabers
Yeah.
and take them away from her before tossing them back to her and like, go back to your master and come fight me when you're a real, like, oh, and like I felt like they were trying to give you that scene again, but also say, but remember, he's not Yoda.
No. No, he is not. Because that would imply he's a Jedi Master.
That
But
would.
anyway, that's my last one. That's my last one on the subject.
Nope, that's fine. I'm glad we got to get a couple in there.
And so they end up showing a chase scene in space of the Star Destroyer chasing the transport that Obi-Wan and Leia are on.
Best
And
chase scene in all the Star Wars so far, all the series. It was the only one that I'm like, oh, this feels like a chase similar to what we saw at the end of the Last Jedi.
yeah, and hey, Star Destroyers, they aren't slow, man.
No.
They're pretty menacing capital ships, okay? They're among the best in the Star Wars canon. Um it was really interesting to see, Roland knows the motivator shot, and Kenobi knows that if they lead Vader away, if they get him just to chase Obi-Wan, it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the scene with the Grand Inquisitor on the bridge and Darth saying like, "Hey, there's this gunship that split off. There's only one life form aboard." And Vader's like, "Oh no, we're going after Kenobi." But in reality, they had the potential to snuff out some of what would become the rebellion in
Oh, I
its
think it would
early
have crushed all of
stages.
it.
Yeah, right. Like right then and there. I mean, it's it really goes to see how Vader's fixation cost him.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even call it Vader's fixation. It's more of Anakin's. And and I think that's what really cuts down on Vader's in Vader's, I guess, in his power. So Obi-Wan leaves Vader away, and of course Vader does the Sith thing, and he's like, I will face him alone. I mean, at this point, do you really want to try it? Do you? I mean, not even bring the Grand Inquisitor with you?
Yeah.
Like, come on, Vader, that's not smart. Um, Especially because a lot of the times we see Vader, he's with an entourage in the original trilogy. He's always got guys next to him. Typically, it's stormtroopers more often than not, but you know, he's breaking onto the Tantive, had stormtroopers. He's invading Hoth, stormtroopers. Like Vader travels with the posse, so for
Oh,
him
he
to go
does every
alone,
time.
yeah. So for him to go alone was just bush league. Come on, you're a Sith Lord, and you're doing this childish thing. At least Count Dooku had those like servo droids with him. Like Count Dooku also had a posse. Like Vader, come on, it's a Sith. It's a Sith code. It's right next to like passion is power. Hates the way to the dark side. Yada yada. It also says you need a posse to look cool. That's in the Sith code. Um, and it sets the frame for their final confrontation. And this is the only problem I had with the finale was there are too many damn planets in the Star Wars galaxy that have a breathable atmosphere.
Yeah. Oh, see.
For all intents and purposes, that thing was a moon.
Yep.
I don't know how you guys are just breathing all willy nilly, especially it's just asthma incarnated Vader. Come on.
I You're 100% right. That is one of the biggest, and the gravity is similar to like an Earth planet. Yeah, no, there are a lot of issues with that. I completely agree.
You can just
Um,
chalk it down to like, it's Star Wars.
yeah, it's the, I don't know, it's the Force. The Force makes planets breathable. Um, so I have to say, like, I loved the setting for this planet. It was desolate. It was a rock planet. Could have been a mining planet. It felt like a cold version of Mustafar. So I was incredibly excited for that. Um, the other thing I was excited for is the other part that I was really excited for was bringing back just a repeat of the scene um, that was done well in Rebels with Ahsoka and Anakin and Vader going over each other. The fact that they said, "Hey, we're gonna do the same again. We're just gonna give you Hayden Christensen and James Earl Jones." I was like, "This is spectacular." The face cut, hearing that, the fact that Obi-Wan clearly was just like, "Nah, motherfucker, I'm going for the life support systems on you." Um, I
He was bashing it with the hilt of the saber too,
Yes, oh, it was
which
pain and being effective. I
and that
thought that
really
was
that
great.
also gave us, I think, the strongest we've ever seen Kenobi and will ever see Kenobi after Vader had, you know, gotten the high ground on him.
Yep.
We missed probably one of the best scenes. It's like Obi-Wan about to going through his PTSD, hearing like Anakin's turn to the dark side, um, but then being filled with images of Leia and of Luke, and then we really see Kenobi reach his apex. And there's that shot of him with his lightsaber. He's like, he has all of the rocks behind him, and he just starts pelting Vader. Oh my god, I expected the rocks to run out at some point, Chris, and they just kept coming. He was like, I don't know if you've ever seen the specific episode of SpongeBob. It's like during a snow day, and Patrick's just wailing on Squidward, and it's just like an auto cannon. It was ridiculous. Kenobi was throwing.
And honestly, that is one of the points of this entire series I have the most issues with. Um, it felt I
That's
didn't
not
like
how the Force works. Sorry.
exactly. It's always moving rocks. I was like, oh, that's what Ray did. She moved all those rocks. Um, but it just felt like, okay, Kenobi, now you're a little too strong. Like Vader ripping down the ship, fine, but him picking up all the rock, like him like taking out a couple rocks and hitting him here and there. Like when he's pulling down the one stalactite on him or stalagmite on him, and Kenobi's like deflecting it, and Vader's like, "Okay, your strength is back." I'll even give him getting out of the rock pile by just throwing the force out and being like, "Okay, I can feel it. This is it fully enveloping me." But I would have rather it been more subtlety or like picking up small things here and there and doing it, because when he just like brought everything up, I'm like, okay, we're fighting SSJ God Kenobi. And I had a problem with that simply because like at no other point did that feel viable. Anakin doing that, sure, I'm gonna bring you back to that bridge scene one more time because it was so good. But Kenobi doing that, when you see him so many other times, it's he and Anakin are able to do these crazy feats, and you realize, nope, that's Anakin's the reason it's possible. That's the only other point where I'm like, I feel like this was a gross misuse of the Force and Kenobi's abilities.
See, I'm on the exact opposite of that spectrum. I loved it. I thought I've always been on the side of Kenobi being a very powerful Jedi. Gets you know kicked around a whole bunch, but for the years that Luke and Leia are growing up, Kenobi's really the last one. You know, Yoda's like smoking ketamine or something on Dagobah, doing frog things. So during the entire series, Kenobi's the last semblance of the Jedi Order as it was, and he knew the stakes. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it just goes back to Obi-Wan having no business defeating Anakin on Mustafar, because Anakin was the more powerful Jedi, but he did what he must. And when Kenobi says those words, it's go time. It's like an like a secret power up. Don't, ladies and gentlemen, don't face Obi-Wan Kenobi if he says he will do what he must, because he will do what he must.
Um, I yeah, when he fought on Mustafar, and especially when you get that callback to him fighting Anakin and Anakin wanting to win, you're right. He shouldn't have, but he got better positioning. And like I said, to me, it showed that he was like Mustafar there, like and harkening back to like going for the high ground was like, okay, you're right. In a one-on-one fight, I cannot take you as a fighter, but I can take you as the person that you are. And that's what I liked about Kenobi was that he was he knew his Padawan, his apprentice, so well that he's like, hey, don't try this. I have the high ground. We know how this would end. And Anakin was like, nope, I can do this. And here it was, I'm gonna have to fight. Like now, I have to fight you for all stakes out. And it also felt like when he was bashing on him with the hilt, I'm like, this isn't Obi-Wan fighting honorably. This is Obi-Wan fighting for everything. This is all the emotion. This is the hurt, the rage. This is all of it coming out.
Mm-hmm. And I think it had a nice, fighting for everything. That's exactly how Ahsoka felt in Rebels
Mm-hmm.
when she was confronting Vader. The only reason she finds out it's truly Anakin is because Vader's about to end both Ezra and Kanan's lives, like right then and there. And Ahsoka, like lunges at him from behind and then gets the mask off.
Yeah.
Um, that's, I guess, those are really the only two ways that Vader is ever, has been unmasked. And I loved how Disney did a great job of, you know, of unmasking Vader on different sides of different sides of the mask. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yes.
like Ahsoka got off, his left portion of the mask, and then Kenobi did the right. Also gave him that gnarly scar on his head. I thought that was a nice touch.
And I like the fact that it's like Luke gets to see Anakin Skywalker the last time.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, you're right. I think those were so beautifully done, and I like how it's like, no, these people would have had the greatest influence on my life, so they're the ones I that of course can be me and get to see my face. They get to inflict that kind of damage, whereas the others don't get to matter in that way. They're just people to fight. Like when Ezra, it's like, I'm not scared of you, and it's like you'll die braver than most. Actually, no, you won't. You're gonna die like everyone else does. But Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, no, he has history with them, and he's going to feel them. And I think it was,
Beautifully
I,
executed.
and I think yeah, it was so well done to harken back and to kind of draw that motif.
I can only imagine, Filoni. It's like that George Lucas quote. It's like poetry because it rhymes. It's just Dave Filoni following in those footsteps. Comparing the Ahsoka and Vader scenes, or the Ahsoka and Obi-Wan scenes with Vader. Um, I wasn't prepared for the imagery and just the sheer force of that scene when Vader gets unmasked, and seeing Obi-Wan, just the look on his face as Vader's like, "Don't worry, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did," and just like the poor face that Obi-Wan has there broke my heart. And he's like, "Well, then I guess my friend is really dead." And then he's like, "See you around, Darth." I was
And
like,
walks away.
"Oh, just the chills." I was gutted after that. Oh, it hurt. It hurt so. It was awful. Um, they did a really great job of just playing with my emotions during that scene.
In I actually love that entire sequence. I love the fact that he leaves him there. He's like, all right. He goes, you know what? All I wanted to do was see if Anakin was still there. Anakin wasn't, and he's like, I'm not here. Darth Vader isn't worth my time, and he leaves him. Uh, and I think that is truly important. That he just like walks away. I personally think that Anakin should have ran or Vader should have ran away at that point. I don't care how against his character. I just like kind of want the Grand Inquisitor to be like, "Oh fuck, I need to get you back on the ship because this isn't going to go well for us." Um, but I did like the fact that like, nope, he beats him. He beats him poorly. We get to see both sides of the face, and then we get to see like Obi-Wan be like, "All right, have a good one, Darth," and just like won't even call him Darth Vader. Just says Darth as if it's a throwaway thing, and leaves.
Yeah, you know, so I think it really serves to solidify Obi Wan's point when you get to the Empire Strikes Back, and he's trying to talk Luke out of redeeming Vader. He's like he's more machine now than man, and it's like no, Obi Wan really felt that way.
Yeah,
He thought Anakin was gone, and that was it. I thought that really gave more credence to how Obi Wan felt in the original trilogy because it always didn't line up for me that the last time, and this is one of the reasons I really enjoyed we got Kenobi, but the last time that Obi Wan saw Anakin, he was burning alive, and
mm-hmm.
they're having this intense emotional scene. But then you fast forward to A New Hope, and it's like kind of just calm. Obi Wan's calm. He's ready for this. It's like after all of that time, I would have expected more emotion in that New Hope scene, which just it didn't line up. So knowing that this was the last confrontation that they would have, um, up until A New Hope, it makes sense, because this is the emotional breakdown kind of feeling um, that Obi Wan's experiencing. It's the halfway point between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, um, and I thought that was also really well done.
I think you're completely right. I think them being like Disney and like the execution of that being like, okay, uh Anakin's dead. His quest there was to be like, is Anakin still alive? Can I find him? Can I save him? Nope. He says he killed Anakin. He's no longer responding to that. He's Darth Vader. He kind of absolved me. He's like, I'm not, what you made me. Like this is or he literally says like, this is not, of your failures. This is who I am. This is what is left is who I choose to be. And it was like, okay, like this was going, hey, Obi-Wan, it wasn't that you were a bad teacher, it's that Anakin made poor decisions, and that's what led him here. You can like it to me, it absolved a lot of what Obi-Wan did. At the same time of this, I think it also lends credence to the ending scene. So I guess we should skip because we're getting a little bit long here, and I
Hmm.
this is going to be a long one because we're breaking down a lot. But let's talk about the last episode, like the last 10-15 minutes of the final episode.
Yeah, go for it.
So we all think Riva dies. She finds the communicator at which Bail Organa tried to contact Obi-Wan saying, hey, no, we said no talking, but it's been so quiet that if I don't hear from you, I will go to Tatooine to find the boy. And that's when she kind of puts together like Owen, Obi-Wan, and Luke. And her entire ending like ploy is, you're right, I couldn't kill Vader, but I can kill his kid.
Yeah,
And I'm like, that's like the most dark side thing we're going for here. Okay.
and I love how they did a great job of never actually having Luke see who was chasing him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you get to A New Hope, and he sees a lightsaber for the first time. He's like, "Oh yeah!" It's like as if an Inquisitor didn't. chase him into the desert with one like during his childhood. I liked how he was knocked out for that scene. Um, yeah, and with Riva I think is the only character that knows so much of the story. It's like she knows that Anakin's Darth Vader, which a lot of people, I think, maybe outside of Tarkin, didn't know,
Hmm.
and maybe Thrawn, probably Thrawn. He was a smart guy. Uh, um, not only did she know that, but it's like she knew that Darth had a son and a daughter. Well, not a daughter, but a son.
Yeah, the
Children.
daughter
Children.
was the really big one. It's like I know he has a son, and I love the fact that she became so singularly focused on that she didn't even think of Leia.
Yeah, and uh seeing seeing, Riva obviously catches up to Luke because unlike earlier in the series, kids don't get away that easily from grown-ups. Um
His getting farther away, I is more believable because one, Riva was already wounded. Two,
mhm.
Owen smacked her twice in the same wound, and three, Baru also proved that she could throw down if she had to.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Owen and Beru are dogs. Listen. Like I know they get I get they get murdered by some stormtroopers later in life. Um but they weren't messing around in Luke's childhood.
Yeah, and
I thought it was great. That was also another kind of horrifying scene to watch. Kenobi did the series overall did a great job of getting uh kind of kind of thriller horror scenes.
yeah, yeah, thriller. It had some moments where it's like this is just a scary scene, almost like Aliens or Jaws, where it's like it's not a horror movie, but this is a terrifying sequence.
Yeah, exactly. Um and that scene carried so much weight for me, especially with Reva's character, because you see her over Luke about to do it and she can't. It's one of the nicer redemptions I think we've had for any kind of character, because it's a redemption of not wanting to turn into something, not wanting to turn into the trauma that she experienced, which, you know, I guess I don't see happen a lot in TV shows and movies, and that was nice to see. Um, I guess like the progression of that happening. What did you think?
I I love that her first coming back was, "Am I him? Like, am I the monster that did things to me?" Because we don't know what her past sins are as an Inquisitor.
Yeah,
So,
not much, not much.
like, other than capturing Leia, like I like that when she tries to do the force mind thingy with Leia, Leia literally pushes back and goes, "No." To me, everything that she did was this vengeance, and at the end of the day, she's like, "This isn't who I am." Like, I'm hurting because my family died. We saw Obi-Wan talking to Leia like, I was taken from my family. I knew I had a brother. I think I remember my mom. But we really got to see like how the Jedi all felt about being Jedi, and this idea of no, the temple became my family. Um and when she comes back and she just falls there and she's like, I didn't do it. I like how she's carrying him in her arms and she puts him down, and Beru and Owen don't even acknowledge them, but she even looks and goes like, "Oh, you love him like he's yours," and Owen goes, "He is my son, like he is ours, he is our child." Um, and I even like the interaction where it's like, "Oh, they go into the thing to get a speeder belt because Luke broke the speeder belt again." And they're like, your uncle's a patient man, and he's like, not that patient. And like there were some instances where it's like, here's like him struggling with like, okay, this is his kid, but also there's more going on in the universe for him. But I think Riva coming back with him in their arms, they don't say anything to her, they don't like scowl at her, they get Luke and they get Luke to safety, and they're like, okay, we're gonna trust Ben to do this. The fact that the Baru was like, hey, we all knew this day might come, goes in and goes, "Hey, by the way, I've been saving some blasters." And
Yeah.
it's like, okay,
Hey,
we're gonna go hard.
Beru's a real down to Tatooine girl, okay?
Yeah, and I honestly, the fact that they were like, "Hey, the Tuscans are on the hunt again," so we've established that we know Tuscan Raiders hunt, and they do that. So Luke would have some experience to this. And they're like, "What's the rule? Um, remember if something happens, hide. If not, run." And they did. Like, I was like, "Oh, for Luke trying to get away, everything made more sense than when Leia was kidnapped. Like it felt like they learned so much from that one chase scene, and they gave it to me here to where Luke gets to the canyon and he's walking up there, and and then like he slips and falls and makes noise because he's a kid, and that's how he gets captured. I thought all of that was fantastic. I think her coming back, like I said, cannot be stated enough that her coming back and going, "Am I him?" Like not Anakin, not Darth Vader, just him, and we all know what she means, but she doesn't say both. And instead Obi-Wan goes, "No, you chose not to go down that path. You get to be your own person from here on out."
And it just goes to show a larger lesson for all of us in life is that no matter how far down a bad path you are, you can always turn away from it. You don't, you can't change the past, of course, but you can choose to do the right thing at any time. There's your lesson out there
Yeah.
for tonight,
You can
everybody.
yeah, you can also become someone new. All
And
right.
that leaves the door open for us to see Reva too in the future, which, I enjoyed her. I enjoyed Moses Ingram's, portrayal of her too.
Mhm.
I thought she did a phenomenal job. So
Before we get to the ending real quick, because I feel like we'll sign off with the actual end of the series. I think the Inquisitors are just the way of getting around the rule of two. They're not actually apprentices. They're not actually Sith. They're just these like kind of force sensitive people, and I think that's why they can have so many Inquisitors. Like if Vader were to die, one of them could be tapped to be, the new Darth. But I think it's just like that. It's like the minor league where it's like, maybe you can get tapped to be up, but you can be sent back down. Just
yeah, no, I there's always rules to get around the rule too. It was pretty well done.
all right. Ending sequence time. I think
Woo!
this ending sequence, you're right. It is the best send off and sign off of uh any Star Wars so far, any miniseries, and probably any of the movies. I think it should have been a two-part ending sequence though.
Why do you think that?
Okay, so ending sequence, guys. Obi-Wan packs up his stuff and leaves, and he packs up his stuff and leaves, and you see him like fold it up. He leaves like he leaves like a small box there, and then he stops by to see Ben and or he stops by to see Luke and Owen. And Owen goes, "What are you doing here, Ben? You said," and he goes, "And I will. I wanted to let you know that I was leaving. Um, you're right. He needs to be a boy. It's the best thing for him, so that way he can become his own person." And he says so much. He needs to be a boy. This is, I need to let Luke grow up. Luke make his own choices. Luke decide to do this, and let him have a personality, because that was a huge problem of the Jedi Order. He doesn't have to say it, but we know that's what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I'll see you around." And he goes to leave, and Uncle Owen goes, "Hey, Ben, would you like to meet him?" So he grabs the model that we see Luke playing with that was thrown back at him early on, and he walks back up to him, and Luke stands up, and we get it. And we get, "Hello there."
Oh God, the fucking line.
That
Oh,
it should have cut right to credits there. We should have gone through the entire credits, right? The credits should have started rolling. And then when you sit through the credits, the screen slowly comes back in and you get your bonus scene. It made more sense for Qui-Gon to show up as a bonus scene than it does
how it happened.
how it
Yeah,
happened. Two-part ending.
really, I'm inclined to agree with you there too because the entire time I was watching it, I was waiting for Qui-Gon. I was like, we're getting really under the wire here, with just the timing, because it was just he showed up in the last 45. I think he had 45 seconds of screen time.
Yep.
Screen time, if that. Yeah, that would have been a fantastic way to end it. But if only getting to see Qui Gon, getting to see Liam Neeson back again with his few lines of dialogue was such a treasure, though.
So here's the other question I'm going to pose for you.
Hmm.
Kenobi, the entire episode series was going like, Master Qui Gon, I could use your guidance. Master Qui Gon, Master Qui Gon, Master Qui Gon. At no point did I ever feel like he ever contacted him before that moment in the entire 9 years he'd already been there, 10 years he'd already been there. Like Yoda taught that to him. He gets there and he can't do it.
Hmm.
And I think that leads him to also just working. Like he's so disconnected from the Force that he can't do this training. He's only kind of like haphazardly doing it in bed at night, like kind of
Hmm.
like asking for a sign rather than actually doing the Jedi thing.
Yeah, and training and meditating on it, and
Yeah.
yeah. Also makes me wonder if Qui Gon's just been playing him. Yeah, just exactly like that. Qui Gon never actually picked up. He's doing Force Ghost things. They don't tell you about the Force Ghost life.
It also felt like this was Dave Filoni going like, "Hey, do you guys remember when I directed Legend of Korra the first season? Boom, right there.
Yeah, right. I've always been here.
You got
Um,
your Force back. Bam, I'll give you here you go. Here's your Force Ghost powers."
and I will say this is just favorite way to end it off. It's like they're going toward the canyon, and I could only imagine. Obi-Wan's on this long journey to his hut on the other side of the Dune Sea, and Qui-Gon's just sitting there next to him. Just Obi-Wan's asking questions. So like, it's like, huh, what have you been doing the last like 15 years? It's like Force Ghost stuff. It's like, yeah. It's like, all right, that makes sense. Um, but yeah, it was so nice to see Liam Neeson back in the role as Qui-Gon, especially because he's been lying about it the entire you know, well, he lied about being in the show up until he said he hadn't even been like contacted from anybody at Disney, but you got to get a way to get Liam Neeson back.
Yeah.
Um, Overall impressions of Kenobi though, like how would you rate it out of 10?
Ooh, out of 10. Um kind of do my like 7 rating. Out of 10, I'd give it and this is purely going to be pacing and like some of my own personal. I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
Really interesting.
Yeah. The detractors I have are big enough that I'm like, your amazing ending, your like dialogue, all that stuff. I think the detractors are just a little too high, and that's why I go down to a 7. But
I think I'm in the 8.5 range. But also I'm extremely biased because it's Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor in a TV show that we get to see.
yep,
Uh, I give it an 8.5 though because I think the ending of it is so well done um, that honestly, let's be real. If you were to cut some of the fat and release this as a movie, it would be one of the best Star Wars movies out there.
10 out of 10.
Um, so I guess I just view it more of like let's call it the Filoni cut. So because you get that fat,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think because you can cut it into a movie and it would be a 10 out of 10, that warrants the 8.5 rating. Because you still have all those scenes to make it great, but sure there are some detractors. I personally don't think that they're big enough for me to lower it at all.
I can see that. I can see that if it was a movie and it was trimmed up. Yes. Like I said, it was some of the sequences for how good everything else has been were so glaring that I was like, it just it took it down
Just a bit,
just
right?
enough. But yeah, but hopefully, winners, you all enjoyed that. Let us know what you think in the comments below. I hope you enjoy this movie long cast of our spoiler cast of Kenobi. Probably should do one for the Bad Batch when we get there too. So look forward to these. I've been having fun talking about like these nerdy things.
Hey, that's what I'm here for. I am the proprietor of all things nerdy.
All things nerdy and most things Star Wars. But yeah,
But yeah, I enjoyed myself. Thank you so much for having me on.
yeah, thank you for joining me. I look forward to doing some more of these. Don't forget, guys, you guys can find this on all of your streaming platforms of choice, as well as the channel. Monday and Wednesday for Mr. and Mrs. Play. Tuesday, Thursday, for will be Mr. Play for a hot minute of some hardcore mecha, and then Fridays will be the continuation of Republic Commando, so you guys can get some more Star Wars goodness in there. Remember, you're all winners out there. Keep it weird and have a fantastic rest of your night, everybody.
Nice.